when
it was quite interesting.
When I asked people, come out and campaign with me, they would say, what are we going to do? We're going to leaflet. No. Today we're going to knock on doors and actually
talk to
speak
people.
And people are like, I can't do this. And I'd be like, I was like you 2 years ago.
Yeah.
When I knock on a door, I would pray to God, please don't open the door.
Welcome to HadalTV. My name is Hassan Jama.
And my name is Ahmed Umar.
We are here to engage
And inspire.
to tell our story.
In today's episode, number 2, we have a special guest speaker on HadalTV, Mahadi Sharif Mahamed.
Thank you for having me. I'm really honoured to be here today.
We were glad to have you here, sir.
Thank you.
How's your day today?
It's been okay. It's Friday. Fridays are always a busy day for me. But it's been okay. Just work, family, looking after the kids. And here I am now doing this excellent interview with 2 of my friends and also local residents.
Nice. I mean, for those who don't know who you are, what you do, just give us a bit of an introduction as to a bit of background about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Mahadi Sharif Mahamed. I am first and foremost a resident of Masai, but I'm also a local councillor. So for those of you who don't know what that is, a councillor basically is somebody who's elected by the local residents every 4 years, and our job basically is to sort of bridge the gap between the local residents and the council, and also help local residents issues that they may have. Things that we do also include advocating on issues on behalf of the residents, making sure that residents' voices are heard when local decisions that affect their lives are made by the council. I've been a councillor for 4 years now. I was elected in 2016.
Nice.
When I was elected, I became the first councillor of Somali heritage to ever sit at Manchester City Council.
I remember that proud moment.
It is a proud moment.
Very proud moment.
So it was a bit of a sort of historic moment for our community in Manchester, because until that point we did not have a local councillor of Somali heritage. I'm also currently an assistant executive member or assistant cabinet member for children and schools. So I work closely with the person who's in charge of schools and education for the local council. I've lived in Moss Side for 15 years now. I moved to Moss Side when I was 16, with the exception of 4 years that I was at university. I've always lived in Moss Side. So I am someone who is not only a councillor, but also someone who's embedded in the local community.
Yep. What do you think is your earliest childhood memories are?
So I was born in Somalia.
Yep.
And I came to this country when I was 16. So I spent my formative years and also pretty much half of my life in Somalia, to be honest. I don't have much memory in terms of when I was very, very young. But I do remember, obviously, going to a local Islamic school, studying Quran, going to primary school and also high school in where I lived at the time. It was 16 years ago, but I do have some vivid memories of what Somalia was like, the differences between the two cultures and the two people. The landscape, and also the fact that the way of life in Somalia was a lot different to what I witnessed when I came here. So overall, I have some good memories, but also some bad memories in Somalia.
How did you find the difference when you moved here as a kid? Because 16-year-old is still a young kid. So
I was relatively young when I came here in 2004. You can imagine a 16-year-old who doesn't have a family here, because I came on as a lone child refugee. So moving into a new country, into a new continent, with new culture, new language, everything, and also coming into the country without knowing one word of English. was obviously a very, very
Challenging.
challenging. Yes, absolutely. But obviously, it's I was determined to make the UK and particularly Manchester my home. So despite the challenges, I had to adapt.
Yeah.
To the new situation that I found myself in.
And in terms of, because right now you said you're a councillor and you're also an assistant executive, with the, what was it again, did you say?
Board of Education.
Assistant executive member for children and schools.
For children and schools. What interested you in getting involved into like that field, for example?
So I've always wanted to become a doctor. I mean, initially before I got into politics. I think that's something that's particularly true for the Somali community.
I've got a big smile because it's either you're a doctor, lawyer,
engineer, nurse.
engineer.
Do you know what I mean? And there is obviously there's a reason behind that because our parents want us to obviously wants us to better our lives, but also to do things that would lead us into a job. So obviously things like engineering and nursing, etc. Where obviously after you finish will lead you to somewhere. So initially I wanted to become a doctor. The problem was I wasn't good at maths or science. I just fell in love with becoming a doctor because I worked at I worked at a local hospital, and so I went to college, did some sort of science course that would ultimately lead me to a university. But like I said, I wasn't really good at maths and science, so I decided early on that becoming a doctor was probably a
big of a challenge,
an impossible dream for me, to be honest. if I'm being honest. So then I diverted my attention to doing law. So I wanted then to become a lawyer. So I studied a law course at college. I then got into or accepted into university, which unfortunately I didn't go. And then I kind of developed an interest in. I've always been interested in international politics. I've always watched news, read the newspapers and whatnot. But I've never had any sort of any interest in local politics. So at that time, before I went to university, I kind of developed some interest in local politics. It was also the time when there was a change of government in the country. A new government was coming in, and people were talking about austerity and cuts in public in public services. And so I kind of developed that sort of local interest. So I went to university to study politics and international relations. I graduated from university in 2014, and then I became a member of the Labour Party. So that was where my journey of getting involved in local politics in Manchester began.
So how was the campaign for your first campaign?
Well,
I'm guessing it would be very interesting.
It was very interesting because that wasn't actually my first sort of campaigning in an election.
So you did all the campaigns.
So I did campaigning for the local MP the year before that, and one of the local councillors before that as well. So it was my first time campaigning for myself.
Yes.
So it was obviously different. It was an interesting moment and an exciting moment because I think my sort of candidacy led to a lot of members of our community to kind of sort of develop interest in politics and pay attention to the job that that councillors do, but also the effect that politics, and especially local politics, has on their lives. So campaigning also with friends, people who have never had an interest in politics, who have never taken part in campaigning, but who weren't even members of my party, but who just wanted to help me, become a councillor was very encouraging and a happy moment for me. As I do remember,
I could remember there was a lot of excitement in there, and I think it was a conversation that happened so many times before about the politics, the local councillor, obviously even when it comes to majority of us are kind of Labour anyway, so getting involved, there was always a conversation, but it was the first time that actually someone actually took the step to do something about it.
Yeah.
And I think it created a lot of buzz and a lot of excitement. I remember knocking on thousands and thousands of doors in my side.
But the funny thing is, when
It was quite interesting.
when I asked people, come out and campaign with me, they would say, "What we're gonna do? We're gonna, leaflet." No. Today we're gonna knock on doors and actually
Talk to
speak to people. And people are like, "Oh, I can't do this." And I'd be like, I was like you 2 years ago.
Yeah.
When I knock on a door, I would pray to God, please don't open the door. But people are friendly, especially when you're campaigning in Mossad and you're speaking to actually a local community.
Yeah.
People want to have a chat with you.
Yeah.
They might not, look at the leaflets that you're giving them, but they do care about issues that affect,
Because I remember it was a summer when we did our first campaign,
Yeah.
and I remember people were like, open the door, trying to even give you a cup of tea and say, come in.
Oh wow.
And you were like, okay, I just need to move on to the next door.
Yeah.
They're like, come in, and like they were very friendly. I mean, it was an experience for me. Like it was a really.
It's not always, campaigning isn't always a pleasant experience.
That's true.
It depends where you're campaigning.
Yeah.
But when you're campaigning in an area that's as friendly as Mossad, where obviously we are from the local community, so when people see us, even if they don't want to, for example, vote for me or vote for the candidate I'm
still
supporting,
very friendly.
they're still going to be very friendly because we're here. This is our local community, and so it was. You are absolutely right. It was April 2016, and it was just we had posters.
I had one on my window.
Yeah, on all the windows, and it was a fantastic moment, to be honest. It was a really good time, and I'm sure I've thanked you. But also on the record, I want to thank everybody who made that moment.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. I remember in the early days at the local youth centre. This is pre the time when you got involved into campaigning or even probably going into politics or local politics. You were always someone who always loved the debate, whether it was on a smaller scale at the local youth centre about whatever it might have been. But what is it like, sitting on the big table now,
To be honest with you, it's I think when you're outside of something, you don't fully know what that is. So even as a young age I've always had interest in politics, I never actually thought of basically running for public office. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. As a matter of fact, I wanted to finish university, do my masters, and probably work for an international organization. That was my initial plan. And so I've even doing simple things like joining sort of the Labour Party. I thought, actually, what am I going to achieve from this? What is going to be like? But then once you take that first moment and you kind of like get into it and you have that first experience, you see, actually, this is not too difficult. If everyone else is doing it, why can I not do it? Do you know what I mean? So it from outside, it looked difficult to achieve, to get involved in politics and run for public office. But once you're in, going back to your question, you start to realize that actually this is normal. This has been done, forever. It's people. These people are like you. Some might be have more experience, or might be more educated, or might know more. But everybody has started from somewhere, and as long as you have that drive and that passion and the commitment to do the job, it's not something something that anyone can do. But politics is kind of different, I think, to other professions. In my experience, you really have to have interest, a keen interest, to actually do it. Nobody can make you do this. And obviously that's a lot to do with the fact that people have a bad perception about politics, or thinking all politicians are liars or crooks, or it's a dirty game, as they say. But it isn't really. It isn't. Everything is political. Everything is to do with politics. And I always say to people, look, even if you don't want to run for public office and go face that scrutiny, there's other ways that you can obviously make a difference. And that's why I always say to hold people that you vote for to account when they're not delivering for you. And so it's 4 years I've been a member now, a councillor. It's been okay. it's not in some ways it's not what I expected, because people think that you have so much power to do whatever you want, but it actually isn't like that. It's a rewarding job.
Yes.
But it doesn't come with the sort of powers that people think that we have as local councillors.
Yeah.
So now, like as a councillor, what's your day-to-day job like? Is it a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5? Because for me personally, I pretty much have no idea. Or do you work evenings? Are you doing outside of office work? Like, what does it entail?
Yeah, so I'm glad you've asked this question, because I get asked this question all the time. So being a councillor isn't a full-time job. People think it's a full-time job unless you have a special responsibility. So for example, unless you're in charge of the health department of the council or the education department of the council, you actually can have another job. It's a part-time job. We don't actually get a salary. We get an allowance. We don't actually work for the council. We're elected by the local residents in our areas. So we're not actually accountable to the council as an institution. We're accountable to, obviously, we're governed by a code of conduct for members, etc., etc., and obviously party rules, etc. But it's not a job where you, unless you have a special responsibility, like I said, where you actually get up every sort of like it's a 9 to 5 job. So it's a very busy job, and especially when you're a councillor in an area like Mahadi that has a lot of issues. It's actually more than a full-time job in my experience, because in my experience, I live in the area. I pretty much know every corner of Mahadi, and so we get more casework than other areas. I would argue. Then obviously on top of that, there's issues that we've had in the past, issues that are sort of like that we've seen most recently. So the work is never ending, but it's not a 9 to 5 job. So I could have a meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning, have one at 12, have another one at 5, have another one at 7. I could still be sending an email at 10 o'clock in the night, which I usually do, sometimes 12 o'clock at night. So, I suppose you could work as little as possible, but also you could do as much as possible. In my experience, I would like to think that I do as much as possible, because I'm heavily invested in the community.
What do you think the difference is between when you first got elected and now? Do you see any difference in the area, or like when it comes to like crime, or like is there any difference? Like, is it area changed? Because because it's never stands still, isn't it? There's always a lot of changes in the area.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm obviously one of the local councillors, so I would say yes. Mahadi is better than 4 years ago. Obviously, you have to go back to the history of Mahadi to kind of understand what the community is like. Some of the issues that we've had in the past, and we came from a long way in terms of what Mahadi was like 20-25 years ago.
Yeah.
And we have a period of time where we went on the national news all the time, where people weren't attributing everything that happens in the city or around Mahadi to Mahadi. There are always challenges.
Yeah.
There are always challenges, and I understand people sometimes kind of measure the success of shall I say politicians, or how much politics makes a difference in terms of what they see physically in the community. But people often sort of like overlook, in my experience, is the difference that we make in the lives of individuals.
Yeah.
Because this job is not. It's about obviously fixing potholes and making sure the rubbish is collected on time and things like that. Absolutely, that's the core of what we do. But at the same time, our job is also to make a difference in people's lives as much as we can. And that's the sort of the bit that people don't always see, that we do quite a lot.
The reason why I asked the question is I've seen a change in the area for the past 4 or 5 years. It's becoming more like a student area, and I think it's there's a lot of projects, there's a lot of new buildings, there's a lot of new businesses. So the change is there to be seen, because obviously the name. Yeah. There's always the word, the name Mahadi is always seen as something, a challenging name, or people still see us what it used to be. Yeah.
See, I go back to you mentioned students now. A lot of people receive that as an issue and say, actually, we don't want the area to be
full of students.
And a student area. Do you know what I mean? We don't want what's the word, gentrification. We don't want this this to expand and big skyscrapers to be built in Mossad, which is a genuine concern. Nobody wants this to be a student area basically, because we have families here. This is sort of like a family area. But depends how you look at it, to be honest. I mean, I think the area has come from a long way. It's still got its own challenges. The area has improved over the last 10-15 years, but obviously challenges remain, especially issues around young people.
Yeah. Because I remember growing up, let's say from high school, college, like almost into uni and stuff, there was always things happening that we could get involved in. I know there's been a change in government and things were cut. But nowadays I tend to see a lot of young people just almost like clueless. There isn't really much happening. Like me growing up, there's a place for me to go play pool, someone to speak to, play the PlayStation at the odd centre.
Like youth centres?
Yeah, like youth centres and stuff. But I can understand why that doesn't exist as much. But like from your perspective, is there much being done in the area?
So absolutely, fantastic question, Ahmed. You're absolutely right. I think we grew up together.
Yeah.
We used to go to the same youth club, the Hadal Youth Centre. You're absolutely right. I do think that there were a lot of things to do as a young person back 10, 15 years ago that are probably not available now. There's two things I would say to that. One is obviously, as you will know, because of austerity measures and the cuts that the subsequent governments have imposed on the council. The council has sort of basically decimated its youth provision and had to adapt. And that wasn't sort of like a decision that was made lightly, even though personally I probably would have disagreed with that decision. But it was a decision that was taken at the time anyway, given the circumstances. And so that obviously has had an impact on libraries, on the funding that youth service providers used to get from the council, etc., etc. That had a negative effect on a lot of young people, and I think some of the issues that we are seeing in the area right now are as a result of the fact that many of those young people haven't had the opportunity to access those youth provisions and haven't benefited from mentoring and having that safe space, and so I think given the circumstances, I think actually we've done pretty well in terms of having still a vibrant youth provision in Mossad. And actually, if you compare Mossad to other areas, we do have some excellent youth service providers who do work with young people, who have been doing work with young people despite cuts to their funding. And we've actually done pretty, I would say, a decent job with the little amount of money, with the little amount of funding that these youth service providers get. And actually, if you compare Mossad to other areas as well, we've got Trinity House, we've got the Powerhouse, we've got Trinity Hideaway. I mean, quite a lot of areas don't have these youth provisions actually, and we do have quite excellent young people who have always worked with young people, who are willing with young people, who are still working with young people. And again, I say some other areas, compared to Mossad, don't have that. So I think one of the issues that I should point out is that there is a lack of diversification of youth provision in the area, and I get a lot of feedback from members of the community that all the youth service providers are concentrated in Alex Park State and this side of Mossad, and we need to try and replicate something like that off the Curry Mile, and so I think we need to look at that, and we have a plan to look at that as well, and maybe try and do something about that and see where we can help young people in that part of the area. But yes, overall, I think the number one most pressing issue facing the area is the issues around young people. Some of those issues are systematic. Some of them are issues that we can do something about. I think we are so much invested in making sure that our young people succeed and that our young people fulfill their their full potential. And I think this is a fight that not only the councillors in the council can make a difference, but also it's a fight that the community needs to get involved.
Parents.
Parents need to get involved. The community needs to take the lead. Because actually, if you go back in Mossad, 20, 30 years ago, when we've had some serious issues, it was only when the community took the lead, became active, and said, enough is enough, that actually we started, seeing a difference in the area. And I think it will take something of that magnitude to ensure that we don't go back, or we don't fall back into 20, 25 years ago. But the risk is there.
Have you, seen a drastic change in the way things have been approached? I know we've gone online with meetings and lockdown and everything, but has there been anything that kind of just popped out of nowhere because of, COVID or because of coronavirus? Any new issue that might have arisen, or has there been like a good success in a project because of COVID? How did that impact the area?
Very good question. So, I think from what the last sort of information that I've received, crime overall, I think, has actually gone down in the area. Obviously, it makes sense because most people, have been staying at home, and overall crime, I think, has gone down in the area. We're not seeing, for example, burglaries, theft, stuff like that, happening as much. And now that obviously the restrictions have kind of been eased in the last 3 months, that might have gone up. But now that obviously there's a talk of another sort of new restrictions. I think the more people stay at home and stay off the streets, the less issues normal issues that we will get. So that has been a change. Overall, I think in terms of what has, for example, a good project, again, is linked to COVID because I don't know if you're aware of, but a few months ago we've started a food provision on Clement Road.
Yeah, seen that.
Yeah, to help support people who are vulnerable, the sick, and people who are self-isolating. Now, that food provision was specifically sort of designed for people who wouldn't normally access traditional food banks. And even though we have some excellent food banks in the area, and there have been plenty of food in the area, there were still people and segments of our community who weren't accessing that food for whatever particular reason. So we thought, actually, we need to think outside the box, and we need to design and create a food provision, not only but somewhere that is accessible to them. So we've started that food provision on Clement Road, which has been very successful. They were delivering something like 200 meals a week, to people self-isolating, to vulnerable people, to sick people as well. And that has been we've had a very positive impact.
I think I've seen that a lot of work, and I think I was quite surprised at the beginning when I first seen it, but then obviously it was a good project, and I was quite happy with that.
But overall, our lives have changed.
Yeah.
We don't have face-to-face meetings anymore. We've suspended our 5 sessions. So our 5 session is a very, very integral part of what a councillor does. It's where we sit somewhere every week. Residents come to us and tell us the issues, and then we help them. So we've not done that since March. Obviously, people still can contact us by email or by phone. So no face-to-face meetings. Everything is on Zoom or Google Meet.
Who's seen Zoom coming through? I actually never heard of Zoom until the lockdown.
A lot of people. I mean, I kind of used to use it pre-COVID. Just a few small projects here and there. It
was all about Skype, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty much like Skype. Yeah.
I think Zoom came out now.
Zoom now.
Yeah. So everything is Zoom based now. So we've had to adapt. And I think everybody has to adapt.
I think I've got all my meetings in Zoom as well. Yeah.
So
every Monday now.
It's
on Zoom.
But I think COVID also has shown how you know, our community, you know, the Muslim community have you know, it's shown the sense of fraternity that's visible in the community. The fact that, you know, people are watching out for each other, helping each other, you know, delivering food to each other. We have some fantastic examples, basically, of neighbours who, you know, who have been taking care of other neighbours and making sure that they're okay. And that has been one very positive sort of consequence as a result of COVID-19.
I think that's one positive thing I've actually seen in the area. People being very, very supportive of each other.
No, definitely. And in terms of, because obviously a lot of young people, you know, are staying at home or should be staying at home during lockdown. Is there anything being done in terms of mental health, their well-being? Is there any sort of like online support that's been put in place, whether it's locally or nationally and so on?
Yeah, so fantastic. So we've actually commissioned, I think, 1 or 2 mental health services to actually deliver sessions for young people in Mossad, and that's been ongoing for a few months now. I think they're based at Mossad Powerhouse.
Okay.
So obviously, you know, mental health will be a big issue, I think, post COVID-19, and I think, you know, it will have an effect on quite a lot of people, but also quite a lot of young people. But also the use of service providers in the area have also restarted some of their provisions as well. So they're not completely closed; they are open to young people, albeit obviously making sure that they're heading to government guidelines. So there's a lot of work being done. That mental health services is available in the area for those who need to access it. Obviously, the primary schools and youth service providers themselves also are obviously making referrals as well, where they see fit. So that service is available in the area.
As we talk about, obviously you were interested in international politics. So what's your view of international politics, and especially Somalia?
My personal view is Somalia has come from a long way since, you know, the civil war in 1993, and it's gone through phases. You know, the phases where obviously warlords run rampant in Somalia, where there was, you know, where there was impunity basically in terms of what, you know, the horrible things that took place post civil war. So that phase obviously, you know, ended, and then this was the new phase of basically trying to restore some sort of governance and peace building in the country, obviously, and that, I think, started in 2000 with the inception of the transitional national government, and then I think ever since, over the last 20 years, there's been one progress after another progress, albeit very, very slowly. And I think Somalia in 2020 today is it's a post-conflict society, but I think it's a society and it's a country that obviously has the potential to be something in the future. But I think overall, and I have to choose my words very carefully, I think the country is in good hands. I think a lot of progress have been made over the last 3.5 years, and especially with the leadership of the current regime. And obviously, I know there was a talk of maybe having one person, one vote, 2020, 2021, which ultimately became unachievable or unrealistic. But nevertheless, you know, it's considering where the country has come from. I think Somalis have you know, done something that they need to be proud of. But I think
it's moving in the right direction.
On from now to the next election, I think Somalia will have to have one person, one vote in 2020-25.
Yeah, I think it's very important.
I think it's you know, it has to happen, and I think the country, 67 or 70% of the country are at the age of 30 or younger, and so young people need to be able to express their views, their political views,
decide the future,
in choosing who, you know, should govern them.
Yeah, definitely.
And would Somali politics be something that might interest you in the latter future?
Yeah, Somalia or Somaliland.
Okay, so I actually I've been back to Somaliland twice in the last 3 years. So I think from now on I'm going to try and make sure that I go there at least every year. Just as to basically be in tune with what's happening in the country. But I think you can never rule that out. I'm here now. I'm happy here. I've got family here. Manchester is my home. It's my adopted home. This is my real home for now. But I think I'm someone who's aware of the fact that that I have 2 homes, and that the country of Somalia shall not be forgotten. So I can't answer that question right now. But you never know. Time will tell.
For now, we're here.
Absolutely.
So what would you say would be next for Mahadi Sharif Mahamed?
Yeah. So at the moment, actually, I've gone back to university last year to do masters in international development and governance and politics. I have 2.5 years left of my term as a councillor. So my term will finish in 2023, and then obviously, if the local members of my party allow me to be the candidate, then I can stand again. So I think the next step from here now, and I don't know if it will happen, is to hopefully break another record. Now I've become the first councillor of Somali heritage in the city, but hopefully I will become, God willing, the first Lord Mayor from Somali background in the city of Manchester.